The thunder cracked like a gunshot across the darkening Colorado sky as Bethany Hayes stumbled through the tall grass, one hand clutching her side where a deep purple bruise bloomed beneath her torn dress. The year was 1875, and in Cripple Creek, Colorado, a woman alone had few allies and even fewer options. Rain began to fall in heavy sheets as Bethany spotted a weathered barn in the distance, its wooden walls promising shelter from both the storm and the men who pursued her. Her escape from her uncle's ranch had been desperate and dangerous, but staying would have meant certain death after she discovered his involvement in a stagecoach robbery that had left 3 people dead. The barn door creaked loudly as she pushed it open with the last of her strength. The sweet smell of hay and horses enveloped her as she collapsed onto a pile of straw, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion and pain. Blood from a cut above her eye mingled with the rain on her face, and as consciousness slipped away, she heard the barn door opening once more. What in tarnation? A deep voice cut through the darkness. When Bethany awakened, warm lamplight bathed her face. She jerked upright, immediately regretting the sudden movement as pain shot through her ribs. A tall man stood several feet away, his stance cautious but his eyes kind beneath the brim of a well-worn cowboy hat. "Easy now," he said, raising his palms in a gesture of peace. "You're safe here." "Who are you?" Bethany demanded, her voice hoarse from thirst and fear. "Adam Abernathy," he replied, setting a tin cup of water on a barrel within her reach but keeping his distance. "This is my land you've wandered onto. Found you half drowned in my barn when I came to check on the horses during the storm." Bethany reached tentatively for the water, her eyes never leaving his face. She had learned the hard way that kindness from men often came with conditions. "I'll be gone by morning," she said after drinking deeply. Adam studied her, the bruises visible on her forearms, the cut above her eye, the way she held her side protectively. His jaw tightened, but his voice remained gentle. "Miss, that storm's set to rage all night and likely into tomorrow. And forgive my bluntness, but you look like you've been through hell already." Lightning flashed, illuminating the interior of the barn for a moment. In that brief flash of light, Bethany saw that Adam's eyes were a striking blue, set in a weathered face that spoke of years under the harsh western sun. He wasn't an old man, perhaps 30 or so, but life had clearly made its mark on him. "You found shelter for as long as you need it," he continued, his voice firm but gentle. "You found shelter forever if that's what you require." Bethany stared at him, confusion and suspicion warring with desperate hope. Why would you offer such a thing to a stranger? Adam's expression grew distant and he turned to adjust the lantern. "Because once someone offered the same to me when I needed it most." He cleared his throat. "Now I've got a spare room in the house. It's modest but dry, and there's a lock on the door which you're welcome to use." Bethany hesitated, weighing her options. The men her uncle would send wouldn't stop searching just because of a storm, but her body was betraying her, trembling with cold and exhaustion. "Can you walk?" Adam asked, noticing her shivering. "I'll manage," she replied, pushing herself to her feet only to have her legs buckle beneath her. Adam moved quickly but stopped short of touching her. "May I help you to the house?" The simple request for permission, something she hadn't heard in a long time, was what finally broke through her defenses. She nodded once, and he carefully helped her to her feet, supporting her weight but maintaining as much distance as their situation allowed. The rain pounded against them as they made their way from the barn to a modest but well-maintained cabin about 50 yards away. By the time they reached the porch, Bethany was leaning heavily against him, her teeth chattering. Inside, a fire crackled in the stone hearth, filling the main room with warmth that seemed to reach for Bethany like welcoming arms. The cabin was simple but clean, with hand-crafted furniture and a few books stacked neatly on a small table. "The bedroom's just through there," Adam said, nodding toward a door off the main room. "There's a robe hanging on the back of the door that you're welcome to use. I'll find you something to wear while your clothes dry." Bethany nodded, unable to find words through her exhaustion. Adam helped her to the bedroom door but let her enter alone, respecting her privacy. True to his word, a heavy wooden robe hung on a hook, and the bed looked clean and inviting. Most importantly, there was indeed a sturdy lock on the door. After changing into the robe, which swallowed her smaller frame, Bethany turned the lock and collapsed onto the bed, too tired even to pull up the covers. She awoke to sunlight streaming through a small window and the smell of coffee. For a moment, disorientation gripped her: the unfamiliar room, the strange bed. Then the previous night came rushing back, along with the pain in her ribs and the stiffness in her joints. A soft knock came at the door. "Miss, I've left some clothes outside your door and breakfast is on the table whenever you're ready." "Thank you," she called back, her voice stronger than it had been the night before. She listened as Adam's footsteps retreated before unlocking the door and peering out. True to his word, a neatly folded pile of clothing sat on the floor: a simple cotton shirt, trousers that would be too large but could be belted, and thick socks. Bethany dressed quickly, wincing at the sight of her bruises in the small mirror hanging on the wall. Her dark hair was a tangled mess, and the cut above her eye had scabbed over during the night. When she finally emerged, Adam was seated at a rough-hewn table, a mug of coffee in his hands. He stood when she entered, his manner respectful. "Good morning," he said, gesturing to the table where a plate of eggs and biscuits waited alongside another mug of coffee. "Hope you're hungry." "Starving," Bethany admitted, taking a seat and trying not to devour the food too quickly. "Thank you for your kindness, Mr. Abernathy." "Adam, please," he replied, retaking his seat. "And you are," she hesitated only briefly. Bethany Hayes." "Well, Miss Hayes, the storm's passed, but the creek's risen considerably. The bridge into town will be washed out for at least a day or two." He studied her over the rim of his mug. "You're welcome to stay until it's passable again." Bethany set down her fork, meeting his gaze directly. "I should be honest with you. There are people looking for me, and they won't be friendly when they find me." Adam nodded slowly. "I figured as much. Those bruises didn't come from falling off a horse." "My uncle," she said, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "He's not actually my uncle. He married my aunt after my parents died in a fire when I was 16. When she passed last year, She shook her head, unable to continue. "You don't need to explain," Adam said gently. "Not to me, not to anyone." Bethany took a deep breath. "It's worse than that. He's involved in something terrible, a stagecoach robbery. 3 people died." Her voice trembled. "I found some items he'd hidden, personal effects from the passengers. When I confronted him, She gestured to her face. Adam's expression darkened. "Your uncle have a name, Charles Denton," she replied. "He owns the Double D Ranch about 15 miles east of here." Recognition flashed across Adam's face. "I know of him, got a reputation even in these parts." He set down his mug. "Anyone knows you might have headed this way?" "I don't think so. I took his horse in the night and rode west. When I heard his men behind me, I let the horse go and continued on foot through the creek bed to hide my tracks." A small, proud smile touched her lips. "My father taught me that." "Smart," Adam commented with genuine admiration. "We're pretty isolated here. My nearest neighbor is 3 miles away, but Denton isn't known for giving up easily." He stood and walked to the window, gazing out at the rain-soaked landscape. Sheriff in Cripple Creek is a good man, though. Name's Morgan. If what you're saying about the robbery is true, he'd want to know." Bethany's laugh was hollow. "And who would believe me over Charles Denton? He's a wealthy rancher. I'm just a woman with no family, no money, and no proof beyond what I saw with my own eyes." Adam turned back to face her, his expression resolute. "I would," he said simply. "And Sheriff Morgan isn't the type to dismiss anyone without hearing them out first." Something in his steady gaze made Bethany want to believe him, but years of disappointment had taught her caution. "Why are you helping me? Truly?" Adam moved back to the table but remained standing, his hands resting on the back of his chair. 6 years ago, I was accused of stealing cattle from a big operation near Denver. I was innocent, but nobody much cared about that. Got beaten half to death and left to die on the trail." His voice was matter-of-fact, without self-pity. "An old rancher found me, brought me to his home, and nursed me back to health. Never once asked if I was guilty. Just said everybody deserves shelter and kindness." "What happened to the real rustlers?" Bethany asked quietly. "They got caught eventually. By then, I'd moved on." A small smile played at the corners of his mouth. "The old man who saved me, he left me this place when he passed. Said I was the son he never had." Adam's eyes met hers. "So when I say you found shelter for as long as you needed, I mean it." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Bethany felt something tight and painful in her chest begin to loosen. "I don't know how to thank you." "No need," Adam replied. "Once you're feeling stronger, you might consider talking to Sheriff Morgan. Until then, rest and recover." As if to punctuate his words, Bethany's body betrayed her with a wide yawn. Adam chuckled. "There's books on the shelf if you get bored. I need to tend to the animals, but I won't be far. Just holler if you need anything." With that, he donned his hat and coat and stepped outside, leaving Bethany alone with her thoughts and the first real hope she'd felt in months. Over the next few days, Bethany's body began to heal. The bruises faded from angry purple to sickly yellow, and the cut above her eye scabbed over properly. Adam proved to be a respectful host, giving her space while ensuring she had everything she needed. Each morning, he'd leave for his chores after breakfast, and each evening they'd share a simple dinner during which he'd tell her about his day on the small ranch. Adam Abernathy, she learned, ran a modest operation focused primarily on horses. He bred and trained them for ranchers and townspeople alike, with a reputation for producing animals with even temperaments and sturdy constitutions. The solitude suited him, he explained, after years of drifting from place to place following the false accusations in Denver. On the 4th morning, Bethany woke early, determined to be useful. She found Adam in the kitchen preparing to make breakfast. "Let me," she insisted, taking the skillet from his hands. "It's the least I can do." Adam raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "Coffee's already brewing," he said, stepping back. "I'll go check on the new foal while you cook." While he was gone, Bethany explored the kitchen, finding flour, salt, and lard for biscuits, something her mother had taught her to make before she died. By the time Adam returned, the cabin smelled of fresh biscuits and fried eggs. "Smells like heaven," he commented, washing his hands at the basin by the door. His genuine appreciation warmed something inside her. As they ate, Adam seemed thoughtful. "Bridge to town should be passable today," he finally said. "I need to make a supply run. Would you like to come along? Could be a chance to speak with Sheriff Morgan." Bethany felt her stomach tighten with anxiety. What if Charles's men are in town? "Cripple Creek isn't that big, but it's market day. Town will be busy enough that you won't stand out." Adam met her eyes. "And you won't be alone." The simple promise you won't be alone gave her courage. "All right," she agreed, "but I'll need something to cover my head. My hair is distinctive." She touched her dark locks, which fell in waves nearly to her waist. "Mrs. Dawson at the general store sells bonnets," Adam replied. "We can stop there first." 2 hours later they set out in Adam's wagon. Bethany wore the oversized men's clothing Adam had lent her, with her hair tucked up under a hat. From a distance, she could pass for a young man, which was precisely the point. Cripple Creek came into view as they crested a hill, the town nestled in a valley with mountains rising majestically behind it. Despite her anxiety, Bethany couldn't help but admire the view. "It's beautiful," she murmured. Adam nodded. "That it is. Town's grown since the silver strike 3 years back, but it's still small enough that folks know each other. Mrs. Dawson runs the general store with her son. There's a decent hotel, a couple of saloons, and the sheriff's office." As they approached the town, Bethany's nerves returned. "What if no one believes me?" Adam guided the horses onto the main street. "We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. First things first, let's get you proper clothes." The general store was busy with customers when they entered, but Mrs. Dawson, a plump woman with kind eyes, noticed them immediately. "Adam Abernathy, haven't seen you in nearly a month." Her gaze shifted to Bethany, confusion evident on her face. "Mrs. Dawson," Adam greeted her. "This here is my cousin, just arrived from back east. Looking for some clothes that might fit better than mine." Bethany shot Adam a grateful look for the smooth lie. Mrs. Dawson's confusion cleared. "Well, let's see what we can do. Come on back, young lady." She led Bethany to a curtained area at the rear of the store where women's clothing was displayed. Once they were alone, Mrs. Dawson looked at Bethany knowingly. "You're not his cousin, are you, dear?" Before Bethany could protest, she continued, "Don't worry, Adam's one of the good ones. If he's helping you, you must need it." She studied Bethany's fading bruises with a frown. "Now, let's find you something suitable." An hour later, Bethany emerged from the general store wearing a simple but well-made blue calico dress, a bonnet covering her distinctive hair, and sturdy boots. Adam waited outside with the wagon, his expression shifting subtly when he saw her properly dressed for the first time. "Better?" she asked, suddenly self-conscious. "Much more comfortable, I'd wager," he replied diplomatically, but the appreciation in his eyes said more. Their next stop was the sheriff's office, a small building with a single cell visible through the front window. Sheriff Morgan was a tall man with graying temples and a no-nonsense demeanor. He listened without interruption as Bethany recounted discovering the stolen items at her uncle's ranch and his violent reaction when confronted. "Denton's had rumors swirling around him for years," Sheriff Morgan said when she finished, "but no one's been willing to speak against him." He leaned forward. "What exactly did you see, Miss Hayes? Gold watches, jewelry, letters, personal items that wouldn't have belonged to my uncle or any of his men. They were hidden in a compartment beneath the floorboards in his study." Bethany's hands trembled slightly. "And I overheard him discussing the robbery with his foreman, Sam Wilkes. They mentioned that things had gone wrong and that they hadn't meant to kill anyone." Sheriff Morgan's expression was grim. "The Palmer stagecoach robbery left 2 men and a woman dead, if Denton was behind it." He shook his head. "But I can't arrest a man on hearsay, especially not someone with Denton's connections." "So you're saying there's nothing you can do?" Adam asked, his voice tight with frustration. "I didn't say that," Morgan replied. "I've been building a case against Denton for years. Miss Hayes's testimony adds to it, but we need evidence." He turned to Bethany. "Would you recognize these items if you saw them again?" "Yes," she replied without hesitation. There was a gold pocket watch with an inscription to EP and a brooch shaped like a butterfly with blue stones. Morgan nodded. "Edward Palmer. The watch was a gift from his wife." He drummed his fingers on his desk. Here's what I'm thinking. I'll send a telegraph to the federal marshal in Denver. He's been interested in the stagecoach robberies that have been happening along the Front Range. Meanwhile, you stay out of sight. If Denton finds you before we can build a case." He left the sentence unfinished. "She can stay with me," Adam said firmly. "My place is isolated enough that Denton's men won't stumble across it easily." The sheriff's eyes moved between them, assessing. "That might be best for now. I'll send word once I hear back from Denver." He stood, extending his hand to Bethany. "You're doing the right thing, Miss Hayes. Takes courage to stand against men like Denton." As they left the sheriff's office, Bethany felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Do you think he believed me?" she asked Adam as they walked back toward the wagon. "Morgan's no fool," Adam replied. "He wouldn't waste time contacting a federal marshal if he didn't think your story had merit." They spent another hour completing Adam's errands, purchasing supplies, arranging the sale of 2 horses to a rancher outside town, and stopping at the post office. All the while, Bethany kept her head down, nervous about being recognized despite her new clothing. As they loaded the last of their supplies into the wagon, a group of riders thundered down the main street. Bethany froze, recognizing Sam Wilkes, her uncle's foreman, among them. Adam noticed her reaction and smoothly guided her behind the wagon, blocking her from view. "Denton's men," he murmured. She nodded, heart pounding. "The one with the red bandana is Sam Wilkes, my uncle's foreman. He was there when—" She touched her ribs unconsciously. Adam's expression hardened. "Get in the wagon, keep your head down and your bonnet on." Bethany complied, huddling on the seat as Adam finished securing their purchases. The riders dismounted outside the saloon, their loud voices carrying across the street. From the snippets of conversation Bethany could hear, they were looking for her, offering money for information. Adam climbed onto the wagon seat beside her, his body tense but his movements deliberately casual. "Just keep your head down," he repeated softly. "We'll be out of town in a few minutes." As they passed the saloon, one of the men, a tall, scar-faced cowboy Bethany recognized as one of her uncle's hands, glanced their way. For a heart-stopping moment, she thought he had recognized her, but his gaze slid past them without interest. Only when the town was well behind them did Bethany relax her rigid posture. "They're not going to stop looking for me," she said, her voice hollow. Adam was quiet for a long moment. "No, they probably won't," he agreed. "Not until they're forced to." "I've put you in danger by staying with you," Bethany realized aloud. "If they find out you've been harboring me, my choice," Adam interrupted firmly. "And I stand by it." The rest of the journey passed in thoughtful silence. As they approached Adam's ranch, Bethany found herself studying his profile, the strong jawline, the determined set of his mouth, the way his eyes constantly scanned the horizon. He was handsome in a rugged way, but it was his quiet strength and unwavering principles that drew her to him. "Why did you never marry?" The question slipped out before she could stop it. Adam looked surprised but not offended. "Never found the right woman, I suppose," he replied after a moment. "Or maybe I was too busy running." A faint smile touched his lips. "What about you? You're what, 22? 23, she corrected. "There was a man before my aunt died, Thomas Kelly. He worked at the bank in Leadville. We had an understanding, but—" She shrugged. "After my aunt passed and my uncle took control of everything, Thomas suddenly lost interest. Found himself a more advantageous match with a mine owner's daughter." "His loss," Adam said simply, and Bethany felt a warmth spread through her chest at the sincerity in his voice. They arrived back at the ranch as the sun was beginning its descent toward the mountains. After unloading the supplies, Adam insisted on Bethany resting while he prepared dinner, a stew with fresh vegetables from town that filled the cabin with savory aromas. That evening, as they sat before the fire, Adam surprised her by pulling out a battered checkerboard. "My father taught me to play when I was a boy," he explained, setting up the pieces. "Said it taught patience and strategy." Bethany smiled. "My father said the same thing about chess. Chess is a bit beyond my capabilities," Adam admitted with a self-deprecating grin. "But I can hold my own at checkers." The simple game helped ease the tension of the day, and Bethany found herself laughing as Adam dramatically conceded defeat in their second match. It felt strange to laugh after so many months of fear and grief, but also wonderfully freeing. As the days passed, they fell into a comfortable routine. Bethany insisted on taking over the cooking and household tasks, while Adam tended to the ranch work. In the evenings, they would share the day's events over dinner, then read or play checkers by the fire. A week after their trip to town, Bethany ventured to the barn to bring Adam lunch and found him working with a spirited young mare. She stood quietly at the entrance, watching as he spoke soothingly to the nervous animal, his movements slow and deliberate. "There you go, girl," he murmured, gently running a hand down the mare's neck. "Nothing to fear here." The tenderness in his voice and the patient way he handled the frightened horse touched something deep inside Bethany. This was a man who understood fear and respected it, who knew that trust had to be earned, not demanded. Adam glanced up, noticing her presence. "She's coming along," he said with quiet pride. "Been working with her for weeks. Previous owner gave up on her after she threw his son, said she was too wild. But she's not wild, just scared." "What's her name?" Bethany asked, stepping carefully into the barn. "Doesn't have one yet. Thought I'd wait until she tells me who she is." He smiled, patting the mare's neck. "Want to meet her?" Bethany approached slowly, following Adam's example. The mare's ears flicked nervously, but she remained still as Bethany extended her hand, palm up. "That's it," Adam encouraged. "Let her get your scent." The mare stretched her neck, nostrils flaring as she sniffed Bethany's hand. After a tense moment, she nudged Bethany's palm with her soft muzzle. "She likes you," Adam said, obvious pleasure in his voice. "She's beautiful," Bethany replied, gently stroking the mare's forehead. "Like copper in the sunlight." "Copper," Adam repeated thoughtfully. "That's a good name for her." Something shifted between them in that quiet moment in the barn, a deepening of the connection that had been growing since the stormy night when Bethany had stumbled into Adam's life. When their eyes met over the mare's back, the air seemed charged with unspoken feelings. The moment was broken by the sound of approaching hoofbeats. Adam reacted instantly, his body tensing as he moved to the barn door. "Stay here," he instructed Bethany, his voice low and urgent. "If there's trouble, take Copper and ride out the back way toward the creek. Follow it north until you reach the old mining camp. I'll find you there." Before Bethany could protest, he was gone, striding toward the house where his rifle was kept. She remained frozen in place, heart hammering as she listened to the approaching rider. "Hello, the house." A familiar voice called, and Bethany sagged with relief. "Sheriff Morgan." She emerged from the barn in time to see Adam lowering his rifle as the sheriff dismounted. "News from Denver?" Adam asked without preamble. Morgan nodded, removing his hat. "Marshal Jenkins is interested. Very interested. Turns out Miss Hayes isn't the first to accuse Denton of involvement in the stagecoach robberies, but she's the first with specific details about the stolen items." His eyes found Bethany. "He's riding out tomorrow from Denver. Wants to speak with you directly." "Tomorrow," Bethany echoed, a mixture of hope and trepidation washing over her. "He's been building a case against a stagecoach robbery ring operating along the Front Range," Morgan explained. "Denton's name has come up before, but nothing concrete enough for an arrest. Your testimony could change that." Adam's expression was guarded. What about Bethany's safety? If Denton gets wind that a federal marshal is coming to talk to her? That's why I rode out personally instead of sending a message, Morgan replied. No one knows I'm here except my deputy and his family. As far as Denton knows, Miss Hayes has vanished into thin air. His men were in town last week, Bethany pointed out. Still are, Morgan confirmed grimly. They've been asking questions, offering money for information. So far, no one's talked. Denton's not well liked, but money has a way of loosening tongues eventually. What do you suggest? Adam asked. Stay put until Jenkins arrives tomorrow. I told him how to find your place without coming through town. Morgan replaced his hat. Once he hears Miss Hayes' story, he'll likely want to move quickly. Denton's been slippery in the past. After the sheriff departed, a heavy silence fell between Adam and Bethany. The prospect of justice was tantalizing close, but with it came new dangers. Tomorrow, Bethany said softly, the word both a promise and a question. Adam nodded, his expression unreadable. Tomorrow. That night, neither of them slept well. Bethany tossed and turned, her mind racing with all the possible outcomes of the marshal's visit. What if he didn't believe her? What if her testimony wasn't enough? What if Denton somehow learned of the marshal's presence and sent his men? And beneath these anxieties lay another, more personal concern. What would happen after? If Denton was arrested and she was no longer in danger, what reason would she have to stay with Adam? The thought of leaving the safety and comfort she had found in his home, of leaving him, created an ache in her chest that surprised her with its intensity. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and made her way to the main room for a glass of water. To her surprise, Adam was there, seated in a chair by the dying fire, his rifle across his lap. Couldn't sleep either? She asked softly. He looked up, not startled. He had probably heard her door open. Thought it best to keep watch, he replied, his voice equally quiet. Bethany poured herself water from the pitcher on the table, then hesitated before taking the chair opposite him. Do you think it will end tomorrow, one way or another? Adam said, his gaze returning to the glowing embers. Either Jenkins takes your statement and goes after Denton, or it was all for nothing, Bethany finished when he trailed off. Adam shook his head. Not nothing, never that. His eyes found hers in the dim light. Whatever happens tomorrow, you did the right thing. Standing up to Denton took courage. I was terrified, she admitted. I still am. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's acting despite it. Adam leaned forward slightly. My father told me that the night before he left to fight in the war. I was just a boy, but I never forgot it. Did he come back? Bethany asked gently. Adam's smile was sad. No, died at Gettysburg. But he died standing for what he believed was right, and there's honor in that. Without thinking, Bethany reached across the space between them and placed her hand on his. There's honor in what you've done too, helping a stranger when it put you at risk. Adam's hand turned beneath hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. You're not a stranger anymore, Bethany. The way he said her name, with a softness she hadn't heard before, made her breath catch. For a long moment, they simply sat there, connected by their joined hands and the unspoken emotions flowing between them. Finally, Adam gently withdrew his hand. You should try to get some rest. Tomorrow will come soon enough. Bethany nodded, reluctantly rising from her chair. At the door to her room, she paused and looked back. Adam, thank you for everything. His smile was warm. Sleep well, Bethany. Morning brought clear skies and a tense anticipation that hung in the air like the prelude to a storm. Bethany dressed carefully in her blue calico dress, braiding her long dark hair and pinning it up neatly. Her hands trembled slightly as she splashed water on her face from the basin. Adam had been up since dawn, checking the property boundaries and ensuring everything was secure. When Bethany emerged from her room, he was just returning to the cabin, his expression alert but calm. "No sign of anyone yet," he reported, washing trail dust from his hands. "But it's still early." They ate a simple breakfast, neither of them having much appetite. Afterward, Adam cleaned his rifle while Bethany nervously rearranged items on the shelves, needing to keep her hands busy. "What will you do?" Adam asked suddenly. If Denton is arrested." The question caught Bethany off guard. She turned to face him, noting the careful neutrality of his expression. "I hadn't thought that far ahead," she admitted. "My aunt left me a small inheritance, but my uncle controlled it. If he goes to prison, perhaps I could claim it." Adam nodded, his focus seemingly on the rifle in his hands. "You could buy your own place, start fresh somewhere." "I could," she agreed, studying his downturned face. "Is that what you think I should do?" Before Adam could answer, the sound of approaching horses reached them. He was on his feet instantly, moving to the window. "2 riders," he reported. "One's wearing a badge, must be Jenkins." Bethany's heart raced as Adam opened the door, rifle at the ready but pointed downward. She remained inside, watching through the window as 2 men dismounted. One was indeed wearing a marshal's badge, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a bristling mustache. The other was Sheriff Morgan. After a brief exchange, Adam invited the men inside. Marshal Jenkins removed his hat as he entered, his shrewd eyes immediately finding Bethany. "Miss Hayes," he greeted her, his voice gruff but not unkind. "I'm Marshal Frank Jenkins. Sheriff Morgan here tells me you have information about Charles Denton and the Palmer stagecoach robbery." Bethany straightened her shoulders. "Yes, sir." Jenkins nodded approvingly at her direct response. "Then let's hear it. Everything you saw, everything you heard. Don't leave anything out." For the next hour, Bethany recounted her story in detail, finding the hidden compartment while cleaning her uncle's study, discovering the stolen items, overhearing the conversation between Denton and his foreman about the robbery gone wrong, and finally, her uncle's violent reaction when confronted. Jenkins listened without interruption, occasionally making notes in a small book. When she finished, he reviewed his notes before looking up. "You're certain about the pocket watch, gold with an inscription to EP?" "Absolutely," Bethany confirmed. "There was also a lady's brooch shaped like a butterfly with blue stones, a string of pearls, and several letters that looked personal." Jenkins exchanged a significant look with Sheriff Morgan. The watch and brooch were listed as missing from Edward Palmer's personal effects after the robbery. The pearls belonged to his wife, Matilda. He closed his notebook decisively. "Miss Hayes, your testimony is extremely valuable. Combined with other evidence we've gathered, it may be enough to arrest Denton and his accomplices." Hope surged through Bethany. "So you believe me?" "I do," Jenkins confirmed. "The details you've provided match our investigation perfectly." He stood, placing his hat back on his head. "Sheriff Morgan and I will be riding to Denton's ranch today with several deputies. With luck, we'll catch him by surprise and find the stolen items before he can dispose of them." Adam, who had remained silent during Bethany's testimony, now spoke. "What about Bethany's safety? Denton has men all over the territory." "Once he's in custody, his reach will be limited," Jenkins replied. "But until then, Miss Hayes should remain out of sight." He turned to Bethany. "I'll need you to testify at the trial, but that won't be for some time. For now, staying here seems the safest option if Mr. Abernathy is amenable." "She's welcome as long as she wants to stay," Adam said firmly. Jenkins nodded. "Good. Sheriff Morgan will send word once we've made the arrest. Until then, keep a watchful eye." After the lawman departed, Bethany sank onto a chair, emotions overwhelming her. Relief, hope, fear, they swirled together until she felt almost dizzy with their intensity. Adam knelt before her, his hands gently taking hers. "You did well," he said softly. "Very well. You think they'll find the evidence. What if my uncle moved it or destroyed it after I escaped? Jenkins seems thorough. If the evidence is there, he'll find it." Adam's thumbs traced small circles on the backs of her hands, the gesture unconsciously soothing. "Even if he doesn't, your testimony is compelling. Other witnesses have apparently come forward too." Bethany nodded, trying to take comfort in his words. Now we wait," Adam confirmed, "but not idly. The best way to handle waiting is to stay busy." He rose, pulling her gently to her feet. "I was planning to work with Copper today. Would you like to help?" The suggestion was exactly what Bethany needed, a distraction from the anxiety of waiting. They spent the afternoon in the corral, Adam patiently demonstrating how to approach the nervous mare, how to speak to her, how to earn her trust. Watching Adam with the horses was a revelation. The man who could be so reserved with people transformed around the animals, his face animated, his voice gentle but authoritative. He had a gift for understanding them, for reading their moods and responding appropriately. "You're a natural with them," Bethany observed as Adam demonstrated how to lead Copper in a circle. He smiled, a flush of pleasure coloring his tan cheeks. "They're honest creatures, no pretense, no hidden motives, just pure instinct and feeling." He handed Bethany the lead rope. "Your turn." Under Adam's guidance, Bethany led the mare around the corral, her confidence growing with each circuit. Copper responded to her gentle commands, and when the horse nuzzled her shoulder affectionately at the end of the session, Bethany felt a surge of accomplishment. "She trusts you," Adam said, his voice warm with approval. "That's rare for her. She's been hurt before." The parallel wasn't lost on Bethany. "Sometimes," she said softly, stroking Copper's sleek neck, "all it takes is one person showing kindness for the healing to begin." Their eyes met over the mare's back, and something unspoken passed between them, an acknowledgement of the deepening connection they shared. For a moment, Bethany thought Adam might say something, but instead he simply nodded, a smile touching his eyes. That evening the waiting became harder. Every distant sound had them both tensing, ears straining for hoofbeats that might signal news good or bad. They tried to maintain their routine of dinner and conversation, but an undercurrent of tension ran beneath their words. As darkness fell, Adam once again positioned himself in the main room with his rifle, insisting that Bethany try to rest. "I'll wake you if there's news," he promised. Bethany retreated to her room but left the door ajar. Sleep eluded her as her mind raced with possibilities. What if the arrest went wrong? What if her uncle escaped? What if Jenkins didn't find the evidence? And beneath these worries lay the persistent question, what would happen between her and Adam once this was over? In the silence of the night, she admitted to herself what she had been trying to deny: she was falling in love with him. With his quiet strength, his unwavering principles, his gentle hands that could calm a frightened horse or offer comfort with equal skill. The realization both thrilled and terrified her. After Thomas's abandonment, she had sworn never to make herself vulnerable again. Yet here she was, her heart opening despite her best efforts to guard it. Dawn arrived without news, and the day stretched endlessly before them. Adam busied himself with ranch chores, while Bethany threw herself into domestic tasks, scrubbing the floors until they gleamed, baking bread, mending tears in Adam's work shirts. By evening, the waiting had become almost unbearable. They sat at the table, picking at the stew Bethany had prepared, conversation stilted and frequently interrupted by both of them glancing toward the window at the slightest sound. "They would have sent word if something went wrong," Adam said, trying to reassure her and perhaps himself as well. Bethany nodded, pushing a piece of meat around her plate. Unless something happened to the messenger. Adam reached across the table, covering her hand with his. Try not to imagine the worst. Jenkins seemed capable and Morgan knows the territory well. The touch of his hand on hers sent warmth spreading up her arm. Impulsively, she turned her palm upward, threading her fingers through his. Adam. Whatever she had been about to say was lost as the unmistakable sound of approaching riders reached them. Adam was on his feet instantly, moving to the window while keeping to the side to avoid being silhouetted. 3 riders, he reported, reaching for his rifle. Can't make out who they are yet. Bethany rose, her heart pounding. Sheriff Morgan. Too dark to tell. Adam's voice was tense. Stay back from the windows. As the riders drew closer, Adam's posture relaxed slightly. It's Morgan, he confirmed, recognizing the sheriff's distinctive hat even in the dim light, and it looks like Jenkins with him. Relief washed over Bethany, but it was short-lived as she realized there were 3 riders. Who's the third? Don't know. Stay inside. Adam moved to the door, rifle ready but not raised, and stepped onto the porch. Evening, Sheriff, he called. Wasn't expecting you until morning. Thought you'd want to hear the news right away, Morgan called back as the riders halted in front of the cabin. Unable to contain her anxiety, Bethany moved to the doorway, staying behind Adam but able to see the visitors. Morgan and Jenkins were indeed 2 of the riders. The third was a young deputy she recognized from town. Miss Hayes, Jenkins acknowledged her with a nod. We have news. Did you arrest him? Bethany asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jenkins dismounted, his expression serious but satisfied. Charles Denton is in custody, along with his foreman and 3 of his men. We found the hidden compartment exactly where you described it, with most of the stolen items still there. A wave of dizziness swept over Bethany, and she gripped the doorframe for support. You found them, she repeated, hardly daring to believe it. We did, Jenkins confirmed. Along with ledgers detailing other robberies going back 2 years. Denton wasn't just involved in the Palmer holdup, he was running the whole operation. Adam's hand found the small of Bethany's back, steadying her. What happens now? He asked. Denton and his men are being transported to Denver for trial, Jenkins replied. Given the evidence, conviction is almost certain. They'll hang for the murders. The finality of the statement sent a chill through Bethany despite the justice it represented. When will I need to testify? The trial won't begin for at least a month, Jenkins said. I'll send word when you're needed in Denver. Until then, you're free to go where you please. Denton isn't a threat anymore. Free. The word echoed in Bethany's mind. After months of fear and hiding, she was finally free. Sheriff Morgan cleared his throat. There's something else, Miss Hayes. We found documents in Denton's study, your aunt's will and some banking papers. Seems he was withholding your inheritance illegally. The bank in Leadville has been notified, and the funds will be released to you. This news struck Bethany like a physical blow. Not only was she free from fear, but she would have financial independence as well. The possibilities stretched before her like an open road. Thank you, she managed, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you all. After declining their offer of refreshment, they needed to return to town before full dark. The lawmen departed, promising to send formal notification when Bethany would be needed for the trial. When they were gone, silence fell in the cabin. Adam moved to stoke the fire, his back to Bethany, his movements deliberate. So, he said finally, still not turning to face her, you're free to go where you please and you'll have means to do so. Something in his carefully neutral tone made Bethany's heart constrict. Yes, she replied softly. It seems I will. Adam nodded, his gaze fixed on the flames. Denver might be a good place to start fresh, or perhaps back east where you have family." "I don't have family back east anymore," Bethany said, taking a step toward him. "My parents were my only family. My aunt was my mother's sister, but she's gone now too." Adam turned then, his blue eyes reflecting the firelight. "What will you do, Bethany?" The question hung between them, weighted with unspoken meanings. Bethany took another step forward, closing the distance between them. "That depends," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "On what?" Adam asked, his own voice dropping to match her quiet tone. "On whether I still have shelter here." She reached for his hand, her fingers trembling slightly. "You once told me I'd found shelter forever if that's what I required. Did you mean it?" Adam's fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. "I meant it," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "But I don't want you to stay out of necessity or gratitude. If you stay, I want it to be because I want to," Bethany finished for him. "Because in this place with you I've found more than shelter. I've found home." The words seemed to pierce something in Adam's careful composure. His free hand came up to cup her cheek, his touch feather light. "Bethany," he murmured, her name a question and a prayer. She leaned into his touch, her heart racing. "I thought I'd never trust anyone again after what happened with Thomas," she admitted. "But you've shown me what real trust looks like, what real caring looks like." Adam's thumb traced the line of her cheekbone. "I never expected to find you," he said, his voice low and earnest. "That night in the storm when I went to check on the horses and found you instead, it changed everything." "For me too," Bethany whispered. The space between them seemed charged with electricity, drawing them inexorably closer. When their lips finally met, it was with the gentleness of a question being asked and answered. Adam's arms encircled her waist, drawing her closer as the kiss deepened, becoming more certain, more passionate. When they finally parted, both breathless, Adam rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he said simply. "Not because you need shelter, but because I need you." Bethany smiled, joy bubbling up inside her like a spring. "Yes," she replied just as simply. "Yes." In the weeks that followed, they established a new rhythm to their life together. Adam began teaching Bethany more about the horse business, and she proved to be a quick study. Her natural empathy made her especially good with the more nervous animals, and Adam often found himself watching with pride as she patiently worked with a skittish colt or a distrustful mare. "You have a gift," he told her one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the mountains in gold and crimson. "The horses respond to you in a way they don't with most people." Bethany smiled, leaning her head against his shoulder. "I had a good teacher." "More than that," Adam insisted. "You understand them. You see past their fear to what they could be." "The way you saw me," she replied softly, turning to meet his gaze. "That first night you could have seen just a bruised, frightened woman, but you saw more." Adam's arms tightened around her. "I saw courage," he said. "Even then, half drowned and injured, there was a fire in you that couldn't be extinguished." Their quiet moment was interrupted by the arrival of a rider, Sheriff Morgan's deputy, delivering the expected summons to Denver for the trial. Bethany would be required to testify in 2 weeks' time. "I'll go with you," Adam said immediately after the deputy departed. "You don't have to face this alone." Bethany's heart swelled with gratitude and love. "I was hoping you'd say that." The journey to Denver was Bethany's first real trip since escaping her uncle's ranch. The growing city was bustling with activity, the streets crowded with wagons and carriages, the sidewalks filled with people going about their business. After the quiet solitude of Adam's ranch, it was overwhelming. Adam secured rooms for them at a respectable hotel near the courthouse, separate rooms, despite the deep connection they shared. "We'll do this properly," he had insisted. No gossip or scandal to follow us home. Home. The word filled Bethany with warmth every time she heard it. In just a few weeks, Adam's ranch had truly become home in a way no place had been since her parents died. The trial itself was a grueling experience. Bethany spent hours on the witness stand, recounting her story under questioning from both the prosecutor and Denton's defense attorney. Throughout it all, Adam remained in the courtroom, his steady presence giving her strength when the defense attorney's aggressive questions made her doubt herself. Charles Denton, seated at the defense table, never once met her eyes, but Bethany could feel his hatred radiating across the room. It took all her courage not to flinch when the defense attorney suggested she had fabricated her testimony out of spite after being disciplined for immoral behavior. "Miss Hayes," the defense attorney pressed, "isn't it true that your uncle caught you in a compromising position with one of his ranch hands, and that's why he disciplined you?" Before Bethany could respond, the prosecutor was on his feet. "Objection. Counsel is attempting to malign the witness's character without any foundation." "Sustained," the judge ruled sharply. "Mr. Benson, confine your questions to relevant matters." When Bethany finally stepped down from the witness stand, her legs were trembling so badly she feared she might collapse. Adam was at her side immediately, offering his arm for support as they left the courtroom. "You were magnificent," he murmured as they walked out into the bright autumn sunshine. "Steady and clear, even when that snake tried to rattle you." The trial lasted 3 days, with multiple witnesses testifying to Denton's involvement in the stagecoach robberies. The evidence was overwhelming: the stolen items found in his study, the detailed ledgers, testimony from former employees who had witnessed suspicious activities. On the 3rd day, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on all counts. Charles Denton and his foreman, Sam Wilkes, were sentenced to hang. The other men received lengthy prison sentences for their roles in the robberies. As they left the courthouse for the final time, Bethany felt a weight lift from her shoulders. "It's really over," she said, wonder in her voice. Adam squeezed her hand. "Yes, it is, and now we can look forward." That evening they dined at the hotel restaurant, celebrating the verdict and the closing of that dark chapter in Bethany's life. After dinner, Adam surprised her by suggesting a walk in the nearby park. The autumn evening was crisp but not cold, the sky clear and studded with stars. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, their breath forming small clouds in the cool air. "I've been thinking," Adam said finally as they paused beside a small pond, moonlight reflecting off its still surface. "About the future." Bethany turned to face him, her heart quickening at the serious note in his voice. "What about it?" "When I found you in my barn that night," he began, taking both her hands in his, "I told you you'd found shelter forever. I meant it then, and I mean it now, but I want it to be more than shelter I'm offering you." He reached into his pocket and withdrew a small velvet box. Bethany's breath caught as he opened it to reveal a simple but beautiful gold band set with a single pearl. "I want to offer you my name, my heart, my life," Adam continued, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his eyes. "Bethany Hayes, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Joy burst through Bethany like sunshine after a storm. "Yes," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Yes, Adam Abernathy, I will marry you." His smile was radiant as he slipped the ring onto her finger. "It was my mother's," he explained. "My father gave it to me before he left for the war, said to save it for the woman who captured my heart the way my mother captured his." Bethany looked down at the pearl gleaming in the moonlight. "It's beautiful." "Just like its new owner," Adam replied, drawing her into his arms for a kiss that sealed their promise to each other. They were married 2 days later in a simple ceremony at the small church near their hotel. Sheriff Morgan, who happened to be in Denver on business, stood as Adam's witness, while the hotel proprietor's wife stood for Bethany. It wasn't the grand wedding some might have dreamed of, but for Bethany, it was perfect just as her new husband was perfect for her. The journey back to Cripple Creek felt different somehow. No longer were they returning to Adam's ranch, but to their home. As they crested the hill that offered the first view of the property, Bethany felt a surge of belonging so powerful it brought tears to her eyes. "Welcome home, Mrs. Abernathy," Adam said softly, his hand covering hers on the wagon seat. Bethany smiled up at him, her heart full. "I like the sound of that." That night, as husband and wife, they discovered each other in ways both tender and passionate. Adam's touches were reverent, his lips tracing paths of fire across her skin, his whispered words of love a balm to the wounds of her past. In his arms, Bethany found not just pleasure but healing, a completion she had never dared to hope for. As they lay entwined afterward, her head pillowed on his chest, Bethany marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. "If I hadn't run that night," she murmured, "if the storm hadn't come, if I hadn't found your barn." If, Adam echoed, his fingers combing gently through her unbound hair. "Too many possibilities to count. All I know is that you're here now, and I thank God for it every day." The seasons changed, autumn giving way to winter, and their bond deepened with each passing day. They worked side by side, building the ranch into something even more successful than before. Bethany's inheritance from her aunt, finally released by the bank in Leadville, allowed them to purchase additional land and expand their breeding program. Word spread about the quality of their horses, and buyers began coming from as far as Denver and even Kansas City. Adam's expertise combined with Bethany's natural affinity for the animals made for a formidable partnership. Winter in the Colorado mountains was harsh but beautiful. Snow blanketed the landscape, transforming the familiar terrain into something magical. In the evenings, they would sit before the fire, planning for the spring and the future they would build together. It was during one such evening, as Christmas approached, that Bethany shared her suspicion that their family would soon be growing. A baby. Adam's voice was filled with wonder as his hand moved to rest gently on her still flat stomach. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be without a doctor's confirmation," Bethany replied, covering his hand with her own. "I've missed my monthly time twice now, and I've been feeling different, more tired, queasy in the mornings." The joy that transformed Adam's face was something Bethany knew she would remember forever. "A baby," he repeated, pulling her into his arms. "Our baby." The news filled their home with a new kind of anticipation. Adam became even more protective, insisting on taking over the more strenuous chores despite Bethany's protests that she wasn't an invalid. The doctor in town said women have been having babies while working in fields since the beginning of time. She reminded him with fond exasperation after he tried to prevent her from carrying a basket of laundry. "And I've heard him say that too," Adam conceded. "But you're carrying our child, and I can't help wanting to make things easier for you." His concern was so genuine that Bethany couldn't truly be annoyed. Instead, she compromised, continuing to work, but accepting his help with the heavier tasks. As winter gave way to spring, Bethany's body changed, her belly growing round with new life. Adam would often rest his hand there in quiet moments, his expression one of awe when he felt the baby move. "He's strong," he would say, pride evident in his voice. "Going to be a fine horseman someday." "Or she might be a fine horsewoman," Bethany would counter with a smile. "Even better," Adam would agree, kissing her softly. Their son, William Adam Abernathy, was born on a clear summer day in 1876, arriving with a lusty cry that proclaimed his health to the world. Adam, who had paced anxiously outside during the delivery, was overcome with emotion when the midwife finally allowed him to enter and see his wife and child. "He's perfect," he whispered, carefully taking the swaddled infant in his arms. "Absolutely perfect." Motherhood came naturally to Bethany, just as caring for the horses had. She found joy in the simple rituals of feeding, bathing, and comforting their son. Adam proved to be an attentive father, often carrying William in a sling across his chest while he worked around the ranch, pointing out horses and telling the infant stories as if he could understand every word. Life settled into a new rhythm, days filled with work and care for their growing son, evenings spent together as a family. The ranch prospered under their joint management, and by William's first birthday, they were known throughout Colorado Territory for breeding some of the finest horses in the region. As William grew from infant to toddler, his personality emerged curious, determined, and utterly fearless around the horses. By the time he was 3, he was riding in front of Adam on gentle old Copper, his small hands gripping the saddle horn while his father's arms kept him secure. "He has your spirit," Adam observed one evening as they watched William sleeping, his small chest rising and falling peacefully. "Always charging ahead, never afraid to try something new." Bethany smiled, leaning against her husband's shoulder. "And he has your patience with the animals. Have you seen how he talks to them? Just like you do." Their family expanded again when Bethany gave birth to twin girls, Sarah and Margaret, in the spring of 1880. The double blessing brought double joy and double exhaustion to their household. "3 children under 5, Bethany said with a tired laugh one evening as they finally got all 3 children to sleep. "We certainly didn't plan for this." Adam pulled her into his arms, his eyes twinkling. "Best kind of surprise, though, wouldn't you say?" She couldn't disagree. Despite the challenges of raising 3 young children while running a growing ranch, their life was rich with love and purpose. The years passed in a blur of children growing, the ranch expanding, and their bond deepening. They faced challenges, harsh winters that threatened their livestock, a fire that destroyed part of the barn one dry summer, illness that swept through the family one particularly difficult winter. But through it all, they stood together, their partnership unshakable. By 1885, William was 9, the twins were 5, and Bethany was expecting their 4th child. Their ranch had grown to include several hundred acres, with a reputation that drew buyers from across the country. Adam had hired 2 full-time hands to help with the expanding operation, and they had built a larger home to accommodate their growing family. On a warm evening in late summer, as they sat on the porch watching their children play in the yard, Bethany reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. 10 years, she mused, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "It's been 10 years since that stormy night when I hid in your barn." Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "Best night of my life, though I didn't know it at the time." Bethany leaned her head against his shoulder, watching as William showed his sisters how to make a lasso from a length of rope. "When I ran that night, I never imagined finding this a home, a family, love." "You found shelter," Adam said softly, echoing the words he had spoken on that fateful night. "But you've given me so much more than I ever gave you. A purpose, children, joy I never thought I'd know." As the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Bethany felt a profound contentment. From the darkest moment of her life had come the greatest light, a love that had transformed not just her circumstances but her very soul. Their 4th child, Another boy they named Robert arrived in the autumn of 1885. As Bethany held him in her arms, Adam sitting beside her with William and the twins crowded around to see their new brother, she knew with certainty that this family, this love, this life they had built together was what she had been running toward all along, even when she thought she was only running away. "You found shelter forever," Adam had promised on that stormy night. What neither of them could have known then was that they would find so much more a love that would weather any storm, strong enough to shelter them all.